So the book is called Combat Love. It's my memoir. And Combat Love, I realized, there's a double meaning. And so, to combat something is to fight against something, to try to prevent it. And also, so to combat love, that's just kind of, I think, a cool, compelling concept. And mostly, when I was 13 years old, I fell in love with a local punk rock band from New Jersey called Shrapnel. And their first 45, their first single that they released was called Combat Love. And I played it over and over and over again in my bedroom as a 13-year-old girl, picking up the needle, putting it back down, and playing it over again, and hoping that someday, somehow, I could meet Shrapnel and become friends with them. And so it's really just kind of a symbol of what that 13-year-old girl wanted and the journey that she was on to get it. So a lot of the chapter titles are song titles, because music, as people will see when they read the book, is so important in my life. And music always has been. I connect with music on a very deep level, and it is a crying shame that I have no singing voice and can't play an instrument. So I can truly only be a music fan, and I am a hardcore music fan. So I've always looked to lyrics for life guidance. I learn lyrics very quickly. I know the lyrics to many, many hundreds of songs. And they're, playing in my head at all times. So a lot of those chapter titles are song titles that were playing at that moment in my life. So there's also a playlist for the book, and it's basically the soundtrack of my life.
Tell me more about what was it that allowed you to bleed on the page?
Well, thank you for that. I feel like I, for a long time, was the opposite of you. So you say that, you wear your heart on your sleeve, and for you, it's all about love, and you're able to kind of be open about, what you love. And I feel like starting from when I was young, I thought that was just too vulnerable and too dangerous. And the message that I got was shut it down. Don't let anybody know that you really love them. That's just that's kind of a position of weakness. And so as you'll see in reading the book, I hope, is that it took me a long time, decades, to work my way around through pain, that actually loving somebody fully and unconditionally is a position of strength, and it's brave. But I didn't get there until, my 30s, because when I was a kid and I did that, I felt like it didn't pay off.
Right.
I felt like my heart got squashed. So it took me a long time to work my way back around to being vulnerable enough to love fully. No child wants their parents' marriage to unravel. And even though I didn't know I was 6 years old, I couldn't tell you what was happening. I knew it wasn't good and that there was tension. So I'm writing this Valentine's card to them to remember love. Basically, I'm asking them to not be angry with each other and don't, be annoyed. And I just thought, when I found that Valentine's card, because I have a big tin that I keep, different mementos in. And when I found it, I thought it was so touching that, 6-year-old Alison says to her parents, and remember, it takes two to tango.
I was like, I know, I'm 6 years old. You're like, I'm like, seriously?
Which is hilarious, And so, yes, of course, I totally agree that I didn't have a role model of a happy marriage. Or a committed marriage. So I didn't really even believe that was possible for a long time. And I didn't know what that looked like.
Right.
And I think that both my parents were protecting themselves. There's a whole theme in the book, as you know, about masks. My father makes masks. Masks hang on our walls. And my parents both wore masks, as we all do in life, but theirs were pretty sturdy. Their masks. It was pretty hard to get inside their masks. So yes, I think that the things that we pick up during our formative years do end up affecting our adult lives and our love lives.
Your mom was pretty damn special. When you touch on some very early points where you talk about how she came from this Italian family, how the pressures were on, and her real love was not going to be possible. She was an educator and she wanted to be educated. She stepped outside the box. Tell me a little bit about that. That is who I see you as today.
I really appreciate that, because I do think that I am very much like my mother, and I always wanted to be like my mother. My mother was very elegant, and very intellectual and extremely bright. She still is. She's 84 years old, and she was a real role model for me. And I'm so happy that she is still alive and that she has been alive for this process of me writing the book, because it has been painful. She and I were not estranged, but definitely separated for a few years when I was a teenager. And I'm so glad that we found our way back to each other. And my mother was just somebody that I always admired and always looked up to. She's wildly articulate and intellectual, and that was great to have that woman as a mother. That said, she was a product of the 1950s, and women didn't have that many choices then.
Right.
You basically got married.
Yeah.
And she became a school teacher, and a lot of moms during that era became a school teacher because you didn't have that many other career options. So if she had been born in a different time, I think that her trajectory would have been very different too, and she wouldn't have had as many struggles as she did. Once she got divorced, she was trying to find herself too, and I was kind of along for the ride. As a journalist, I always felt and still feel that my skill set and talent is portable, it's transportable. And so I bring my own ethics and my own experience wherever I go. And so at Fox, at first, Fox was billed to me as a new news channel when it was launching back in 1998. It was going to be a new, just another a competitor for CNN. And at first it was, and then it started changing more into sort of what Roger Ailes' worldview was of a right-wing news channel. And I didn't really want to work at a partisan news channel. So I tried to still use my own journalistic skills and still use my own journalistic ethics. And there were times it was really challenging to do that because that wasn't what Roger Ailes necessarily wanted. So that was certainly a challenge. What do you do when your own moral compass is different than your boss's? And I know a lot of people can relate to that. And what I think you do is you leave. You look for a different job. When your ethics are challenged every day, that probably means that you're not in the right place. So I was very, very lucky to be able to leave with my journalism intact. I'm very grateful that that was able to happen. And then I'm so happy that I was able to go work at CNN. And for these past 10 years, it's been such a peak experience to be at CNN and during such important times in terms of the news cycle and in terms of standing up for the First Amendment and freedom of speech and democracy and all of that. I have really felt the purpose of that. But that carries its own challenges also.
Right.
And so just being in the public eye and trying to fight the good fight for truth and journalism and facts, it has been really rewarding, but also challenging. I was not somebody who was born with natural grit or resilience. I was a pretty soft, scaredy cat of a child. And so, I don't think that like journalism and being on the front lines of duking it out every day with whatever story I was chasing wasn't necessarily a natural fit. However, as you know from the book, as a teenager, I had to develop grit and resilience and self-sufficiency. And then that led to, I think, the perfect career choice for me of journalism, because those are some skill sets you need for journalism. So I try with my own children, we're in a very different era. I was raised in a free-range, kind of semi-parented era of the 80s. And a lot of Gen X and 80s kids know what I'm talking about, that we just didn't have hovering parents. We had kind of often absent parents. I don't know where
Right.
they all were, but they weren't around. And now we're in this like helicopter parenting,
Right.
which I don't like, and I don't think it necessarily helps our children. So I have tried to instill in my children a little bit of self-sufficiency and understand that you guys just happen to be living in this time where parents are really involved, and parents are always trying to save their kids from any pain or any risk or any trouble. I don't think that that is great to helping them develop life skills for adulthood. So there's got to be a happy medium. I don't know what it is. We haven't achieved it yet. But
Right.
between the unparented 80s and the helicopter parenting of now. So I just try to talk to my kids about my own past and how, I mean, they're astonished, they're astonished because they have been much more coddled at some of my stories. But I just try to help them understand that they will have to rely on themselves. I think that we haven't fully appreciated or even digested the mental health challenges of social media and of the digital world. We just always, in terms of our kids, we just tried to limit their exposure. We just tried to set limits, and that they shouldn't be on their phones all the time. They shouldn't be on social media all the time. We've always tried to send the message, social media is not real, right? You know that people are curating an image, right? And thankfully, my kids do know a little bit about that because of my public persona. So they see me in a full face of makeup. They see me in my work outfit. They see that that's different than when I'm at home in my sweats and, barefaced. So they understand that there's the public persona, that there's real life.
Right.
And so Instagram and everything they know is a facade. However, of course, they're still vulnerable to seeing people have a great time on Instagram and seeing their friends and having FOMO and all that stuff. And we just always try to reinforce, get off the phone.
Right.
If it makes you feel sick to your stomach, that's a bad sign. And that's not real, what you're saying.
Right. So AI, we say not real. We all know the scary conversations that are taking place everywhere. Tell me what your thoughts are with regards to where that's going to go, and how scary is it? Are you embracing it, or are you kind of, okay, I need to pause for a second?
I'm somebody who thinks it's the apocalypse. But what do I know? I'm trying to not be a dinosaur, and I'm trying to understand that, particularly for things like medical treatment and everything, maybe it's going to be wonderful.
Life-changing.
Maybe it's going to be life-changing.
Right.
Maybe it's going to be the best thing in the world. But I just don't like that people don't know what's real news,
Right.
what are real facts, what are deep fakes, what's been photoshopped.
Right.
All of that stuff is so nerve-wracking to me, and obviously we have not developed guardrails around it yet. What has happened is the technology is ahead of our ethics and ahead of our guardrails, and that's always really nerve-wracking. So, I'm just bracing like everybody, and I really think that when the heads of technology companies and the grandfather of AI, the people who've invented it, say pump the brakes, we should listen and we should pump the brakes. Don't you just want to talk to a human? Don't you just want in your daily life, when you call your credit card company, when you call the airlines, when you call your doctor, don't you just want a human to answer? Don't you, when you email somebody, want a human to respond? I recently read an email from somebody who claimed to be named like CJ, and I was like, I'm talking to AI right now, aren't I? Like the email was phrased in a certain way that I was like, I don't think I'm talking to CJ. I think I'm talking to AI, And
Right.
So I just think that at some point the pendulum has to swing back to where everybody is craving a human connection. And back again to one of the themes of my book of music, there are things that are really basic, like music, that unite us.
Right.
Everybody has that feeling of their favorite song or their first concert or a song that moves them. And I just think we can't let go of that. We really have to lean into those kind of old school connectors.
Yeah, I agree.
And really just never let go of that.